Emily Johnson was 27, but the years had aged her in ways that didn't show on her face. To an outsider, she seemed like any young woman. Bright eyes, a gentle smile, the kind of person you might pass by at a bookstore or coffee shop without realizing the storm she carried inside. But behind that quiet composure lay a lifetime of unspoken sacrifices, of choices she never got to make, and of dreams she buried because her family's needs always came first. From her earliest memory, Emily had been the glue that kept the Johnson household from falling apart. Her father, Rashid Johnson, was a man of rigid principles, a hard worker who built his life from nothing. But in the process, he became cold, authoritative, and unyielding. Her mother, Salma, had once been tender, but years of feeling unloved hardened her into someone sharp-tongued, constantly venting her frustrations through arguments that echoed in the house night after night. Emily's older brother, Adil, inherited Rashid's stubbornness. He carried himself as if he were the second head of the family, constantly asserting dominance over his sisters. And then there was Haina, Emily's younger sister, a storm of emotions wrapped in charm. She was quick to smile, quicker to manipulate, always needing the spotlight, and never afraid to step on Emily's feelings to get it. Growing up in such a household was exhausting. Emily learned early on that peace came not through confrontation, but through silence. While her father shouted, she listened. While her mother wept and cursed, she absorbed the pain. When Adil demanded obedience, she gave it, and when Haina threw tantrums, Emily smoothed them over. She was the buffer, the listener, the mediator. And in being all of these roles, she never truly got to be herself. Her life outside the home reflected this silent pattern. She never pursued the law degree she once dreamed of because her father insisted she stay close to the family. She didn't marry the man she loved at 23 because her mother disapproved of his background. And she never took the job offer in another city because Adil claimed the family needed her around. Every decision that might have been hers turned into a sacrifice for the sake of family unity. On her 27th birthday, as friends celebrated milestones, marriages, careers, travels, Emily felt the crushing weight of how different her journey had been. She had spent more than 2 decades being the quiet protector, and in return, she carried invisible scars. Nights of crying into her pillow, mornings of forcing a smile, and endless days of playing the good daughter when she wanted to scream. But despite the pain, Emily wasn't bitter, at least not yet. A part of her still believed that maybe, just maybe, her sacrifices had meaning. Maybe one day her father would look at her and see more than duty. Maybe her mother would hug her instead of scolding. Maybe Adil would treat her as an equal. Maybe Haina would recognize her loyalty. These hopes, fragile as they were, kept her holding on. This opening chapter of Emily's journey is about weight, the kind that doesn't break bones but breaks spirits. The kind of weight many people carry silently in families torn by conflict, where the peacemaker becomes invisible. It's a story not just of Emily, but of anyone who has ever swallowed their own happiness to protect those they love. And for those listening, watching, or reading, it's a reminder, if you've ever felt like Emily, unseen, unheard, and unappreciated, then her journey is one you must follow. Subscribe now, because what happens next isn't just her fight, it might be yours too. The Johnson household looked normal from the outside. Their 2-story suburban home had a neat lawn, a white fence, and a friendly appearance that made neighbors believe it was filled with warmth. But inside, the walls carried scars of arguments, cold silences, and words that once spoken could never be taken back. For Emily, this home had never truly been a place of peace. Her parents, Robert and Susan Johnson, had been married for over 30 years, but love had long since faded between them. Robert was a man defined by discipline, stern, uncompromising, and quick to anger when things didn't go his way. He believed in control, not conversation. Susan, on the other hand, had grown tired of being unheard. Years of bottled resentment had turned her into someone sharp and critical. Every discussion between them ended in accusations, voices raised, and long nights where doors slammed and silence stretched across the house like a suffocating blanket. Adam, the eldest son, often aligned himself with Robert. He admired his father's authority and mimicked it, even when it came at the cost of compassion. Adam believed leadership was about control, not understanding. He dismissed Emily's feelings with casual arrogance, treating her as if she was fragile, incapable of making her own decisions. His words, though not always loud, cut deep because they echoed Robert's harshness. Then there was Hannah, the youngest, a bundle of contradictions. On the surface, she was charming, playful, and the kind of person others gravitated toward. But beneath the surface lay jealousy and insecurity. Hannah felt overshadowed by Adam's confidence and frustrated by the attention Emily often received for being the responsible one. To cope, she became manipulative, often turning situations in her favor and twisting stories until she looked like the victim. Her talent for emotional games created new fires in a house already burning. Every dinner became a battleground. A casual remark from Susan would ignite Robert's temper. Adam would defend his father, amplifying the tension. Hannah would throw in sly comments, often targeting Emily to deflect attention from herself. And Emily, always in the middle, found herself putting out flames no one else wanted to extinguish. She tried to keep the peace, to redirect conversations, to absorb the hurtful words so arguments wouldn't escalate. But the weight of constant conflict was crushing. Neighbors thought the Johnsons were a picture-perfect family, attending church together on Sundays, hosting barbecues in the summer. But those were masks, temporary performances. Behind closed doors, Emily often sat alone in her room, listening to muffled shouts through the walls. She remembered nights when her parents argued so fiercely she feared they might split apart. And though she longed for stability, the truth was, part of her wished they would separate, if only to end the cycle of pain that replayed every day. The divisions didn't stop at the parents. Adam and Hannah, instead of being allies, competed endlessly. Adam viewed himself as superior, while Hannah fought for recognition in whatever way she could. Emily was stuck between their storms, constantly dragged into choosing sides she never wanted to choose. She often wondered, what was family supposed to feel like? For her friends, family was laughter, traditions, unconditional support. For Emily, it was walking on eggshells, measuring every word to avoid an explosion. It was exhaustion, not comfort. It was duty, not joy. The most painful part was that, deep inside, Emily loved them all. She didn't just tolerate them, she wanted them to heal. She wanted Robert to soften, Susan to forgive, Adam to understand, and Hannah to grow beyond her jealousy. But wanting and achieving are two different things. And in the Johnson household, peace felt like a dream slipping further away each day. For the audience, Emily's divided family is painfully relatable. Many know the heartbreak of watching loved ones turn into opponents, of homes becoming battlegrounds instead of sanctuaries. And here, Emily's struggle becomes their mirror. She isn't just telling her story. She's telling the story of anyone who has sat at a family table where love was replaced with conflict, where every word carried the risk of starting another war. The Johnsons weren't just divided, they were crumbling. And the cracks in the foundation would soon push Emily toward a choice she had avoided for 27 years, to continue sacrificing herself for a family that refused to change, or to finally choose herself. By her 27th year, Emily Johnson had become a master of silence. She knew how to read the shift in her father Robert's tone before an argument erupted, how to sense the bitterness in her mother Susan's sighs, how to anticipate Adam's lectures, and how to sidestep Hannah's manipulative complaints. For years, she thought this skill was survival. But lately, she began to wonder, was this survival, or was this surrender? The thought haunted her as she sat in her room one late evening, staring at the faint glow of her phone. Messages from friends filled her screen. Photos of weddings, baby showers, new jobs in distant cities. Emily scrolled, forcing smiles, but inside her chest, she felt the sharp ache of comparison. She had sacrificed so much in the name of loyalty, but what had it owned her? She remembered the man she once loved, Daniel. At 23, she had imagined a life with him. He was kind, thoughtful, and he believed in her dreams. But when she brought his name to the family table, Robert dismissed him as not stable enough. Susan labeled him not the right match, and Adam sneered at his career choices. Only Hannah stayed silent, her eyes sparkling with the satisfaction of seeing Emily denied something precious. Out of loyalty, Emily let Daniel go. 4 years later, she still wondered what her life might have been if she had chosen differently. Her career dreams had suffered the same fate. Emily wanted to study law, to build a life beyond the suffocating walls of her house. She received an acceptance letter from a university in another state, an opportunity to carve her own future. But when she shared the news, Robert insisted she stay close to support the family. Susan reminded her that leaving would break her mother's heart. Adam warned her it was impractical, and Hannah mocked her for thinking she was better than them. Emily tore the acceptance letter quietly, swallowing her pain like she always did. But at 27, the cracks in her spirit were widening. She no longer found comfort in silence. Each sacrifice felt like a piece of herself slipping away. She began asking questions she had never dared before. Am I truly loyal, or am I simply afraid? Am I protecting my family, or am I allowing them to control me? The Crossroads appeared one night during a family gathering. The tension was as sharp as ever. Robert criticized Susan over finances, Adam chimed in, and Hannah threw sarcastic comments to stir the fire. Finally, Robert turned to Emily and demanded, "Why don't you speak? Why don't you tell your mother she's wrong?" For years, Emily would have caved, playing mediator, offering comfort. But that night, she simply said, "Because it's not my fight, and it's not my responsibility to fix what you keep breaking." The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting match. Everyone stared at her as if she had spoken a forbidden truth. Emily's words had cracked the routine. She didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She simply refused to carry a burden that was never hers. That night, Emily sat awake, replaying her own words. For the first time, she hadn't chosen loyalty at the cost of herself. For the first time, she felt a surge of power, small but undeniable. She realized loyalty and self-respect weren't supposed to be enemies. Real loyalty meant love, and love could not exist without respect. What she had been offering for 27 years was not loyalty, it was silence, submission, and fear disguised as duty. This was her crossroads. One path led back to the life she knew, the dutiful daughter, the quiet sister, the peacekeeper. It was safe but suffocating. The other path led to the unknown, confrontation, independence, and possibly losing her family's approval. But it also led to freedom. Emily understood that the choice wouldn't be easy. Walking away might mean being branded selfish. Standing up might mean facing years of resentment. But the alternative was worse, losing herself completely. For the audience, this moment resonates deeply. How many people have lived Emily's struggle? Torn between keeping the family intact and saving their own soul? Between honoring parents and honoring themselves? Between loyalty and self-respect? Emily's crossroads is universal. It's the moment when silence is no longer survivable, when staying becomes more painful than leaving. Emily didn't have her answer yet, but she knew one thing with certainty. She could no longer remain the girl who sacrificed everything in the name of family peace. The choice loomed ahead, demanding courage she wasn't sure she had, but courage she would soon discover was already inside her. Breaking points never arrive with warning signs. They creep in quietly, hidden in everyday moments until one final spark ignites a fire that cannot be put out. For Emily Johnson, that spark came on a rainy Friday night when the storm outside mirrored the storm within her home. The family had gathered in the living room. Robert, her father, sat in his worn armchair, the television on but ignored. Susan, her mother, paced back and forth, muttering about bills and responsibilities. Adam, the older brother, leaned against the wall, arms crossed, carrying his usual air of superiority. Hannah, the youngest, lounged on the couch scrolling through her phone, tossing out sarcastic comments to anyone who would listen. Emily sat quietly in the corner, her presence almost invisible, as it had been for most of her life. But this night would not be like the others. The argument began, as always, with something small. Susan accusing Robert of spending too much on a new tool set. Robert snapped back, belittling her worries. Adam jumped in, defending his father, and Hannah smirked as if enjoying the show. Voices rose, words flew like daggers, and tension thickened the air. Then, for the first time, the fire turned on Emily. "Emily," Robert barked, his voice sharp. "Tell your mother she's wrong. You always see the truth. Say it." Susan spun toward her daughter. "No, Emily. Tell your father how impossible he is to live with. Be honest for once." Adam joined in, his voice commanding. "You're the only reasonable one here, Em. Say something. Stop being so quiet all the time." And finally Hannah, with a sly smile, whispered just loud enough, "She won't. She never does. She's too weak." Something snapped inside Emily at that moment. For 27 years she had been the family's buffer, absorbing their anger, patching their cracks, keeping her silence to preserve their fragile peace. But their demands that night weren't about truth. They were about control. They wanted her to take sides, to be their pawn in a war they had waged long before she was even born. Her hands trembled as she rose from the couch. The room fell silent, surprised by her sudden movement. Emily's voice, steady but filled with years of suppressed emotion, cut through the chaos. "I'm done." The two words hung in the air like thunder. Robert's brow furrowed. Susan's pacing stopped. Adam straightened, and Hannah set down her phone. For once, Emily had their full attention. "I'm done being your peacekeeper," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "I'm done swallowing my words so you can all feel powerful. I'm done sacrificing my happiness to hold together a family that doesn't even want to be whole. For years, I believed silence was loyalty. I thought if I stayed quiet, if I gave enough of myself, maybe you'd finally see me. But you don't see me. You see a tool. And I won't be that anymore." Her words poured out like a flood, unstoppable now. "Dad, you demand respect, but you've never offered it. Mom, you play the victim but never admit your part. Adam, you think control makes you strong, but it only makes you cruel. And Hannah, your jealousy doesn't make you invisible, it makes you toxic. All of you expect me to be the glue, but the truth is, I'm breaking. And I won't let you break me anymore." The room was frozen. Robert's face reddened with anger. Susan's eyes welled with tears. Adam clenched his jaw, and Hannah looked away, her confidence shaken. But Emily didn't stop. "You've taken 27 years from me. 27 years of silence, of sacrifice, of burying my dreams because you said family came first. But family isn't supposed to feel like prison. Family isn't supposed to demand you destroy yourself for their comfort. I've realized something tonight. I can love you and still choose myself. And that's exactly what I'm going to do." Her voice broke, but not from weakness, from release. It was the sound of chains falling away after decades of captivity. For Emily, this was more than a confrontation. It was transformation. For the first time, she wasn't begging to be heard. She was declaring her existence. She wasn't just the quiet daughter or the obedient sister. She was a woman reclaiming her power. The silence in the living room stretched long after she finished speaking. No one knew how to respond. Robert, so used to control, had no words. Susan, so used to blaming, had no defense. Adam, so used to dominating, found himself powerless. And Hannah, so used to mocking, finally realized Emily's silence had never been weakness, it had been patience. Emily walked away from the room that night with her heart pounding but her spirit soaring. She didn't know what would come next. Maybe her words would fracture the family further. Maybe they would resent her forever. Or maybe, just maybe, her courage would plant the seed of change. But one thing was certain, she had finally chosen herself. And for the audience, Emily's breaking point is a powerful reminder silence may keep temporary peace, but only strength creates true respect. Many people wait their whole lives to find this moment of courage. Emily's story tells them it's possible. If she could find her voice after 27 years of silence, so can you. The night Emily stood up to her family, she didn't sleep. Her words replayed over and over in her mind like echoes in a canyon. For the first time, her silence had been broken, her truth spoken aloud. Instead of guilt, she felt something new coursing through her veins: freedom. Morning came heavy in the Johnson household. The air was tense, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Robert avoided the breakfast table, retreating into his workshop. Susan sat quietly with her coffee, her usual sharpness dulled. Adam buried himself in his phone, while Hannah refused to make eye contact with anyone. And Emily. She walked into the kitchen with a calm she had never known before. The power dynamic had shifted. They didn't say it, but they all knew it. Emily was no longer the family's silent buffer. She had drawn a line they never expected, and there was no going back. Over the next weeks, Emily's transformation became undeniable. She stopped cushioning her words, stopped apologizing for existing. When her father tried to bark orders, she replied firmly, "That's not my responsibility." When her mother slipped into guilt trips, Emily didn't bite. She set boundaries instead. When Adam belittled her, she met his arrogance with quiet strength. And Hannah's manipulations, they no longer worked. It wasn't easy. There were tears, slammed doors, and long silences. Robert accused her of disrespect. Susan cried that Emily was tearing the family apart. Adam sneered that she was selfish. Hannah mocked her newfound confidence. But for the first time, Emily didn't crumble. She realized that their reactions weren't proof she was wrong. They were proof she was finally disrupting the broken system they had all been trapped in. Her courage began to ripple outward. At work, she spoke up in meetings where she once stayed quiet. She reconnected with old friends she had pushed away to keep the family happy. She even reached out to Daniel, the man she once loved, not to rekindle romance, but to apologize for not choosing herself back then. To her surprise, Daniel didn't carry bitterness. Instead, he admired her growth. That conversation alone gave Emily a profound sense of closure. One evening, sitting alone with a notebook, Emily wrote something that would become her guiding truth. Love without respect is poison. Family without peace is prison. Silence may look like loyalty, but it is really surrender. I will no longer surrender myself for anyone. Those words were her declaration of independence, a promise to herself that she would never again sacrifice her soul for the sake of keeping others comfortable. Her family didn't change overnight. Robert remained stern, Susan still bitter, Adam still arrogant, and Hannah still insecure. But Emily changed, and because she did, everything around her slowly shifted. They began to realize their words no longer controlled her. She wasn't the pawn in their battles anymore. And in some unspoken way, they respected her more because she respected herself. The final lesson in Emily's story is not about victory over her family. It's about victory over herself. For 27 years, she believed her worth depended on how well she kept others happy. She measured herself in silence, sacrifice, and invisible wounds. But the moment she chose herself, she discovered that true strength is not in keeping peace at all costs. It's in daring to demand respect, even if it disrupts the peace. To the audience, Emily's stand is both a mirror and a message. How many of us live lives shaped by fear of disappointing others? How many bury dreams, swallow words, or stay silent just to avoid conflict? Emily's story is a call to courage. It tells us that self-respect is not selfish, it's survival. That standing up doesn't mean you stop loving your family, it means you start loving yourself. 2. The story closes not with Emily having a perfect family, but with Emily walking into a new chapter of her life with clarity and strength. She is no longer the quiet 27-year-old trapped in sacrifice. She is Emily Johnson, a woman who found her voice, took her stand, and refused to lose herself again. And as her story concludes, one final message lingers for the listener. If Emily's courage spoke to your heart, if her journey reminded you of your own silent battles, don't forget to subscribe. Because stories like Emily's are not just tales, they are lessons in how we rise, how we fight, and how we finally choose ourselves. Emily's stand is not the end. It is the beginning of a life where she finally belongs to herself. And that, more than anything, is the most powerful conclusion of all.